All right, so good evening, everybody. Welcome to today's session, today's webinar. Thanks a lot for always being a part of this. So this will be the first in the month of October, and as always, we normally would have two, which implies that this webinar holds every 2 weeks, every fortnight. So today we want to discuss very quickly about disconnected tables in Power BI. Let me share my screen and so we can get right into this. If there are people that you think will benefit from this webinar and they're not here yet, you might want to do well by inviting them. I just sending them a reminder so that they get to join us as we progress. All right, so what are disconnected tables? Sorry, I didn't prepare any slides for this. It will just be more of a talk through, and then we'll see practically what we are talking about. So disconnected tables, as the name implies, they are just tables that are disconnected. Okay, so they are tables that are not connected on the data model. Pardon me, I didn't even confirm if anyone can hear me. I guessed that everyone can hear me. So may I have your confirmation quickly, everybody? Uh, can anyone hear me? All right. Okay. Thank you. My guess was right. All right. So disconnected tables, they are tables that are not connected. What do we mean by this? So the natural way or the natural thing that happens on your data model is that all or most of the tables that you have on your data model will be connected to other tables. Naturally, you have your fact tables, you have your dimension tables. Your dimension tables are supposed to filter your fact tables. So that is what is supposed to happen naturally. But if you ever find a data model that has some tables that do not have any sort of interaction with any other table on the data model, that will be termed a disconnected table. Then there are different use cases for how you're going to make use of such tables in the bid to enhance what is happening in your report or based on certain requirements that you get. Today, we want to look at a couple of those, but first, let me just take us to the data model that we have for this report. So if I go quickly here to the report view, so you can just ignore some of the tables here. So this is what this model looks like for now. It is actually the usual superstore data set that we all know about, or the data model that we all know about, with a few enhancements. So this has the return table, it has the people table. The most common one that you find out there, they don't have those tables. So what you would notice here is that every single table here, so the facts table, this is a fact table, yeah. And then we have dimensions like the dates, the customer, product, people, location, return. In a way, could be a fact table, could be a dimension table, but that's not a conversation. And we have another calendar table here, maybe, yeah. So now, every single table that you see on this model, they are related to the fact table. And what naturally would happen is that when a filter comes, when you're trying to visualize, and a filter comes from the customers table, for example, it comes from the customers table. What you would see is that your table, that's your visual, will get to be filtered down based on exactly what you have selected from the customers table. This is what I mean. If I come here very quickly and I add a table visual here, I have a couple of measures that have been created on this file already. So I just come here to, let's say I have, let's say I have, I go to the products table and I select the product name, and then I go to the facts table. Let me pick the profits, for example. And then I add a slicer to this table, to this page. And for this slicer, I add customer name. So this is what we have for now. So when you look at this, so the natural thing that happens on the data model is that when I select a customer, you see that my visual gets filtered down to what relates to that customer alone. The reason why this happens this way is because of your data model. So which is a case of, now you have a customers table that is filtering the facts table. That is the definition of this line and this arrow that you see here. So this arrow, the direction of the arrow is the filter propagation direction. So which implies that the customers table at the top is meant to filter the facts table that you have at the bottom. So that is what will happen. So now, whenever you now have a standalone table on the model that is not in any way connected to your fact table or other tables, what you typically would get is that that table would not be able to interact with your visuals by way of propagating filters in whatever direction, and that is the reason why it will be called a disconnected table. So let's begin. Case number one, there are different use cases. In fact, if you search the web, you probably will find up to maybe 5, maybe 10, or different use cases for how you can use disconnected tables in your data model. But for this session today, maybe we'll be looking at 2, 3 data about, just so that to make us see some of the possibilities, some of the enhancement that this can bring to our report. And for some of these that will be showing us, these are some requirements that I've had to get in the course of my career at some point, when I was in consulting, or when I was in some other places as well. So now, the first one is, how can you use disconnected tables to manage page navigation? What do I mean? There are times that you build a report and you build a report that has so many pages, so many, maybe up to say 10 pages, 15 pages, 30 pages, 40 pages. I've had reports that are about 40 something pages before. When you have reports with this many pages, how do you manage navigation? So if you go by the traditional way, if I go here to insert and I come here to buttons and I go to navigator and I insert a page navigator on this page, you see that I have this. This is what I have. And this number of pages that you see here, these are by virtue of the pages that I have on hidden. So if you have more pages, you see that this gets to be a lot more messy, and it may not just serve the purpose, or might not meet the requirement of your report being visually appealing. So what option do you have? There are a couple of options around this. You might want to go the route of splitting the pages to say that you want to group together everything that has to do with some customers, and there will be a landing page that will lead to that. There are a number of approaches to this, but let's see how you can make use of a disconnected table. So what we will need to do is, I'll just take out all of these things that we have here. So what I need to do first is to create a table that has all of our page names. So if I come here to enter data, so whenever you want to enter static data, there are two approaches. Let's look at this for now. Maybe we're going to explore something else at the other time. So I can call these page names. And what are the page names? So I see here that I have a page called overview, a page called product, a page called customers, location. Let me just pick a few of these. But one thing to make this work is that you need to ensure that the names you type in here, they're exactly how your pages are named. So I do overview, and then I come here, I do products and location and customers. So let me limit it to those. So these are my page names. Then I can just call this page navigation. So I load this. So when I load this to the data model, so this comes in as a new table on my data model. It comes in as a new table that would not have any sort of relationship with all the other existing tables. So if you come here to the data model, and you see here that I have this page navigation table, which sits somewhere, but it's not connected to any table. So that's step number one. So once you have this, then what you need to do is to now create a measure that would know, or that would define what page has been selected. So what I mean is this: if I try to add a slicer here, and then I go to my page navigation table and I select the page names, you see that I have all of the pages here. And what I want to do is to be able to use this slicer to navigate to whatever page I want to go to. So what I will do now is this. So I'll create a new measure. So I can just leave the measure here. I'll create a measure here, and then I will say selected page. So selected page will be equal to selected value of my page navigation page names. So this measure would return whatever is the selection from the slicer. So if I hit enter here, and then I go on to a card visual, and I add this measure here. So this is blank because nothing has been selected. When I select product, this changes to product. If I go location, it changes to location. So once we have this, then this is sorted. So what we just need to do is to now use whatever is the selection here, map it to our page name, and then that will serve as the navigation to the page name. So what I will just do now is to quickly turn this to a drop down instead of a vertical list. I'll do a drop down. So I have this as a drop down, and then another thing I'm going to do here, because I don't expect any user to try to want to go to multiple pages at the same time. So it is logical to make this single select. So I'm going to turn this to single select. So they are not able to select more than one option at a time. So I do overview. You see that overview is selected on the card. Then what I will do next is to add an arrow like this. So I can use this existing one. So I have this arrow here, and then I'll turn on the action for the arrow. But what I would do here is the type for this arrow. There are different types. So you can use whatever buttons that you have on your visual. You can use it to do a bookmark, a drill through, a couple of options. But here we want to use this for a page navigation. So select page navigation. But the traditional thing that we normally would do is now come here to define the destination. If you add code to the destination, this will not work for our case. So what we will do instead is we want the destination for this arrow to be dynamic. So I will just come here to the FX. I come here to FX, and then I'll say that I want to do the navigation with a field value. And I just come here and I say that I think selected page. So I select selected page and I go OK. So now what I've done here is to say that whatever is the selected page here is where I want to go to. So if I come here and I select product, and for this now, I might have to hold down my control key, and then I click on the button and I see that it navigated down to the product page. So this navigated directly to the product page. So if I go back to that page, I think that was page navigation. So if I change the selection to customers and I click on this button, so this will take me now to the customers page. And this is how you could use the slicer, as well as using, you could use slicers as well as using a disconnected table to manage navigation from a page to the other. So just imagine that same slicer, this single slicer that we have here, and this button is all you have to put on all of your pages. So if you have 50 pages of report, this is all, these two, they are all you have to put on all of the pages. And then the user only needs to select what page they want to go to, and they click on the button, and that takes them to a particular page. Yeah, it helps you to save a lot of space on your report, and you don't have to struggle with how do you place the navigation, especially when you have too many pages. So look at that is scenario number one. Scenario number two. So for this, we could have a requirement where you have someone is asking if it's possible for you to make the denomination here dynamic. What does that mean? Such that you are able to allow the user. So normally what will happen is that now our numbers are formatted in this way. So our numbers are showing in hundreds of thousands. A user might say that they want this number to show in millions. Normally, what we'll do is to come here to the format, you go to the values, you try to define how the numbers would show, or you try to even do the formatting from the measure itself. All of those options are there. But someone might be asking, is it possible for you to allow us to manage the format ourselves such that if we want to show this in thousands, it shows in thousands. If we want to show this in millions, it shows in millions. Any user who wants to see the number as it is, they're able to see the number as it is. So that might be a requirement that you get as well. So how do you allow them to manage this themselves? So what you want to do first is this. If you think about the architecture, first is you have built your reports like this. You then want to have a slicer somewhere here wherein someone can say that for all of the numbers on this report, I want to see them by thousands. Or all of the numbers on this report, I want to see them in millions. I want to see them in tens of thousands. You may want to have a selection like that. So when they select from the slicer, it automatically translates to the formatting for the numbers by way of saying that now the numbers will be in would all be divided by 1,000 if they want to see by 1,000, or would all be divided by a million if they want to see by a million. So how do we achieve this? So the first thing is, whatever we go into our slicer, we need to define it first. So what we'll do is to create a table that would have the denominations that they want to see, thousands, millions, hundreds, whatever they want to see, and then would have the units. So 1,000 will be like 1,000, million will be 1 million, and like that. The way we saw earlier was to come here to enter data, to use this to create our table. But another approach, which I typically would prefer because of the fact that it allows you, it makes it easier for you to edit that table. So imagine now, I already created this page navigation table. I created this page navigation table. If I need to edit this table, let's go to the table view to see how it looks. If I come here to the table view, I come here to page navigation. You see that this is what we see. We only see a single column table. You are not able to, excuse me, you are not able to add more items here. So if it ever happens that you add more pages, remember that we did not include all the pages of the report. If it ever happens that you need to add more pages here, then you need to go to Power Query to go and do this addition. You will not be able to do it right from here. So the other approach will now be that we create that table on the fly here itself. So how do we do that? I'm here on the table view. I just go on to create a new table. So I come here to table tools. I do new table. When I select new table as such, so I'll just zoom a bit into this. So what I would do is first, just the same way that we normally will create tables, I'll first need to give my table a name. So I can call this denominations, and then this would be equal to. So now we have a function index that is not mostly used as such. That is on the data table. Ridwan, you said you can't see my screen. Is that the same for everybody? Please give me a reaction if you can see my screen. Can see my screen. Okay, thanks, Require. All right, thanks a lot. So it might be your internet, Ridwan. You might want to exit and come back in. So thanks, everybody. So now, data table. So this is a function that we can use to create a table. So it says it returns a table with data defined in line. So this is what the data table function does. So now I select the data table, and the data table is expecting the names of the columns that you want to create. So the name, you give it a name of the column you want to create and the data type of the column. And if you have multiple columns, you continue in that pair, name, data type, and like that, before you now start to define the data that will go into each of them. So now, what I would do is the first column would be the column that would hold whether it is hundreds or thousands. So I can just call this maybe units of measure. Units of measure. So, and then the data type for these, because this will be a text column, it will just say thousand, hundreds. So I'll say that this will be string, and I have a second column that would hold the actual numbers. So I can say that the value for that, and this will be an integer data type. So once I have defined this, then I need to now define what the actual numbers will look like. But first, you need to give a structure for your table. So the structure for the table would be this this curly braces. So this is what the structure of the table would be. And then within this table, we now have the different rows. So the first row of data is what will be here now. So I can say that for the first one, this will be million. So anyone that wants to see their data in million, then the actual value will now be 1,000,000, 6 zeros, like such. So this is the first row. And then the second row of the table, so sorry, intelligence is covering this. So second row will be like 1,000, and then so this would be 4,000, this will be 1,000, and yeah, so let's leave it at this for now. So then I will just come down here to close my data table function. I'll hit enter, and now this is what we have. So we have the units of measure, which either says million or thousand, and then the value to be this. So the reason why I said that, you may want to go this approach, especially when you want to go this route, especially when you envisage that you may want to increase what is on the table. You may want to add new records to the table. Is if we want to add new records to this table, we don't have to necessarily go to Power Query. Can do that right from here by just adding a comma here, and then we say that we have a new record for this table. So this will be 100, and then this will be 100, like so. And then maybe there's one more. This is unit, which is the exact thing, and then this is one. So I close the curly bracket and I hit enter, and now you see that we have all we need. So you can keep editing this and this continue. So now what would happen now is that if I go on to the data model, so just like we saw earlier, so this one that we just created, denominations, you see that this is here as a disconnected table, and we can use this in our measure. So now what we just need to do essentially is come back here. If I go to my denomination table, so I put a slicer on this page. So if I add a slicer here, and then I select the unit of measure. So what I want you to do is that anyone looking at this report, they are able to select whether they want to see these numbers by 100, they want to see by million, they want to see by 1,000, and maybe they want to see by unit. But again, it's one thing is, so when you're thinking about whatever you're putting in your report, you need to think about it from the user's perspective. So for any slicer that you have on your report, you as a report builder, you have to be able to define whether the slicer should, do you want to allow the users to select single values at a time, or you want to allow them to be able to select multiple values? So that is something that you must define ahead of time. So now think about it. For this particular case, we want them to be able to select how they want to see their numbers. Do you want them to be able to see their numbers by 1,000 and unit at the same time? That would not make sense. So what that means is that it is important that we go to the slicer setting and we turn this to single select. So they're able to only select one option per time. So how does this now tie to what we have already on our measure? So what we need to do is to come here to our measure. So I think on this visual, we already have a measure here for revenue. So I'll just go to that revenue measure and we make a change to this. So this is just doing a sum. So we just do divide. So although we may want this to be a bit cleaner by creating a variable for the denomination that is selected, and then we say that this will be the selected value from the denominations unit of measure. So whatever is selected in the denomination unit of measure. All right, so that is what this will mean. So, but again is, let's leave that for now. So I'll close this, and then I come here, I say that I want to return I want to return this and come back here to the sum of the cells, calculate the sum of the cells, but divide that sum of the cells by whatever value is selected here. So what we can do is that rather than say that of the unit of measure itself, I can use the value itself. So that I just say genome selected. Divide this by genome selected. I close my bracket. So what I will mean is whatever I select here already has a value attached to it. Remember that that will go to the table to filter it. So there is a value attached to it, and then it will just pick that value and divide my cells by it. So if I hit enter now, so see what happens. So now that I selected 100, my numbers went down by 100. If I select a million, my number went down by a million. If I select unit, my number returned to how it was. So this is a technique that you can also implement such that you now allow every single person to be able to select whatever, however they want to see their numbers. So if you have questions, you can pull them all together. We'll have a few minutes to attend to them in while we are wrapping up. Let's go to scenario number 3. For scenario 3, we want to be able to limit the date in context. Let me try to explain this so it's clear to us. So what we're trying to do is this. We have a requirement and someone is saying that on a report like this, so if I just reduce this to show just for a year, on a report like this, imagine this to be a line graph, for example. The user is saying that when they select, the user is saying that when they select any month on your slicer, they want everything that will show on the slicer to stop on that month. What does that mean? If they select June on the slicer, what should show on your line graph should be January to June. If they select October on the slicer, they only want to see up to October. So it's more like saying that they want to see up to the period of selection on your visual. So that is a requirement that you might get. This is not the same as a year-to-date calculation. So you know a year-to-date calculation would be you are summing up everything from the start of the year till the current selected period. So, but for this one, they still want to see the numbers the way they are, but they only want to stop seeing everything that will be after the period of selection. So if the user only selects February, it means that they only want to analyze January and February. And so they don't want to see any other months. They want to be able to concentrate on those 2 months. How do we build this out? Whenever you are having requirements like this, that would mean that you also want to sort of manipulate the way filters flow into your report from a table, that you know that you need a disconnected table. Because if you use your normal date table that you have, if you use it as a slicer that will filter this table, whatever month that you have selected, that is what you would see up. That is the only thing that will be left on your table. So this is what I mean. So if I come out of this and I add a slicer here, this slicer I go to, I think this will be coming from the calendar. So I just pick the month and I put it here. If I put it here and I do January, you see that the only thing that I see here is January, because there is a filter that will be propagated from here to this visual. So that filter being propagated because of how the things were connected on the model, that is what is affecting this. So what we need to do is to sort of create a new table that will mimic the calendar table that will have, but you need to bear in mind that that table must have all of the dates columns that you will be reporting by. So for our case, we'll be reporting by the year, the month, and the actual calculation that we want to do. So we need to create a table that would mimic that as well. So this is how we're going to go about it. So let me go to the table view very quickly. So now I do new table. So for this new table, I can call this new, let me call this new calendar. I call this new calendar, and then I want to summarize my actual calendar table. Excuse me. I want to summarize my actual calendar table by I need the year, I need the month, and I need the month number. So these are the three things that I need from that table. So I need the year, the month, and the month number. I might actually not have needed the month number, but you already know that I'll need the month number. I'll use it to sort the month column. So that's the only reason why I need it. So I hit enter. This is expected to return the same set of columns that we have, just exactly how it is on the date table. But there is one more important thing that we need. We need to be able to define what is the last date. We need to be able to define what is the last date in each of this month, in each of the year. What is the last date there? It's only if you are able to define that, that is what we will tie our filter to, that will now assist us to narrow down what our this top point for our visual based on the selection from the slicer. So if we want to add that to this visual, so what we'll do is that I'll need to now wrap this in a function. So I use the add column function. So I add a column to this existing table, and I can call the column, maybe I call it stop date. And then for this, I just want to pick whatever is the max of the date in that period. So I would say max of the calendar date. So I close my bracket, I hit enter. So when I do this, take a look at what I have. What you would observe here is that the same date is returned. So the same date is returned. So this is because of the fact that the context with which this calculation is happening is not the same as what is here. So now when you use the max function, what is expected is that the max function is working on this column. So which is, we are saying that look at this column, look at the date column on the calendar table and return the max. And the max it says is 31st of December 2017. So that is why it returned the same thing across board. So if you want to force this to use the year and the month context that's already existing here, which would then mean that you return the max date for January 2013. So that will be something like 31st 1 2013. Max date for January 2014, that will be 31st 31 1 2014, and like that. So we want it to go row by row in this calculation, so which is a case of we want to change the context from it using a filter context to it using a row context. The only thing we need to do here is to wrap this guy in calculate. So once we wrap this guy in calculate, so that will force it to change the context, and now you see that for this first term record, it now says that the maximum date, which is the stop date, is 31/01/2013, and this one is 31/01/2014, and that is correct across board. So once this is started, so this is the date that we need. We also need to ensure that this date is a disconnected table. It's not connected on our data model. Otherwise, whatever filter is coming here will flow directly into your model, and that would limit what you would see. So I can come back here now and say that if I come here and on this slicer, I go on to use the new table that I created. So that's new calendar. I select the year and I select the month. So now I have the year and the month on this calendar. So this one, I'm just going to clear the filter here. So first, let's sort the dates, the month the accurate way. So I go back to my tables, I select the month column, and I go by sort by, and I do month number. So I'm sorting the month column by the month number, so that January would come first, and then December will be the last thing. And now you see that this is sorted. So for now, if you select anything here, we won't see the impact. So let me just add a measure here. So I'll do this. So this is there a filter on this guy? Let's just making it sure. Okay, so this modification is affecting that guy. So let me say, okay, let me do this instead. So instead of using this guy, let me just go to pick something on the facts table. Where's the actual column? Profit. All right. So now I have this here. So this is showing the numbers. So if I filter, if I try to apply anything on the slicer, you see that that is not filtering through. It is not propagating that filter to this visual yet. So what I may want to do now is to create a replica of this profit measure, and now it has to be tied to this particular table here, the selection on the slicer here. So this is what we'll do. So let's create the measure. So you just need to understand what is happening with the measure. And so you can always now tweak that to your own specific case. So your specific case might be that you maybe on the visual, you're looking at your report by weeks. And instead of seeing the 52 weeks in the year, you want to be able to limit it to a specific period. It might be that you're reporting by day if you're doing a more real-time analytics and stuff, but the idea is almost the same. So now for our measure, I can say that maybe this will be filtered profits. And for this, first is I need to get what is the maximum date, which is the stop dates that we created. What will be the stop date for this visual? And think about it this way. If I come here to the table that we created, if I go here to the new date, every single stop date here is tied to a month and a year. So if I select April, for example, if I select April, I click on OK, and then I select maybe 2014, I click on OK. You see that it's only a single date that is tied to both of them. In the same vein, if I clear all the filters here and I select any single date here, and I click on OK, it's only a single date because the stop date will be unique to every single combination of the month and the year. If this is clear, then once I'm able to pick this stop date, then that will translate to exactly the month that is selected and the year that is selected. So I come back here, and then I come here to, sorry, I press something. Okay. So I come here to the measure that I was creating, filtered measure, filtered profit. So for this, what I will do is that first I need to now get the selected max date. So which would be whatever is the selected value of the max date column that we created, or the stop dates column, stop date column that we created. So once we have this, so this will return the stop date that we created. Then we can return this and say that we want to now do a calculate, and we want to calculate the sum of our profits. Remember, we already have the profits column on the measure. So we want to have this, but we want to do this for the period that is less than or equal to our selection. So what does that mean? So we want to apply a filter on, the actual calendar date table. Okay, but before we apply the filter, so think about it this way. Remember that this table that we have here, we have the year and the month coming from our original calendar table. Because if we don't have that selection from the original calendar table, the filter to the numbers would not be right, because we want to see the actual profit that we made in January 2025, or in May 2013, or in June 2017. We want to see the actual profit that we made in those months. Because we want to see the actual profit that we made in those months, the first two columns, the columns that will be coming from our date table that will be on the visual, has to be from the main calendar table that is connected on the data model. So that would make that numbers return accurately. So, but because that filter already exists, The first thing we need to do here is to remove that particular filter that is coming from that original calendar table. I'm hoping that we have explained it is a bit clear to us, but the essence of this is that, think about it this way: your numbers must be correct. The only thing that you want to do is you want to be able to limit where your report would stop. Instead of the report showing from January to December, you want to be able to limit it to only show January to March. But even while at that, you still want your numbers to filter the right way. So your numbers have to be correct. So because you want your numbers to be correct, your numbers must be coming, your dates, that's your month and the year, must be coming from the calendar table that is connected on your data model, because that is what is seeing the right number. So you have to use that on your visual. So now, in the measure that we are creating, we need to first take out that filter. We will restore it back, but we need to first take it out. So I will do calendar dates. So the all function is a function that removes filters. So we could say we could use remove filter as well. We could use all. There are a couple of functions that we could use for this instance. So after we have removed this, then we'll just say that we want to only return the dates that are less than or equal to the selected maximum date. And you know that the selected maximum date will be coming from the new table that we created. So it's a way to say that we are tying the two dates table together in the measure and not on the model. So when you have this, and then I close the bracket for the filter function, I close the bracket for calculate. Let's see what this returns for now. So I will hit enter, and then I add this to the visual. So when I add this to the visual, I select February. So when I select February 2013, I'm getting some numbers here. So these numbers, they have meaning, but they don't look right. So it's the same numbers across board like that. If I go to January, so this is what I get, 2450, so which is the number for January here. If I go to February, it sort of added January and February together. And this is what gave this number that you see here. If I go to March, you see that it increased again, which is, it's rolling up those numbers. But what we want to do is, after we have removed the filter from here, so this measure is sort of standalone and it can't see the filter that is coming from here again. And that is why it's acting this way. So we removed it initially because we do not want that filter to sort of limit how the calculation would happen. But now that we have done the actual calculation, let me go to the measure so we understand. We have done the actual calculation we want to do here to say that the dates that should be returned within the context of calculating the profit should be the dates that are less than or equal to whatever is selected on the slicer. So the next thing to do is to tie it back to the selection that you have on the visual itself. And then what we need to do is just to say keep filters. So which means combine the filter that is coming from this guy, which is the filter that is coming from the slicer here, combine it back to the existing filter that is coming from the visual itself. So when we do this now, I hit enter. Let's see what this returns. So I go back here, and now you see that when we selected March, we now have the same numbers. So January, February, March. If I go down to July, so you see that it now returns up to July. If I go down to October, it returns the numbers up to October. And this way, we're now able to limit what would show on the visual based on what we have selected here. So if I just go on this visual and I take out the sum of profit, you see that we are now able to manage that properly. So if I do March, so this shows up to March, this shows up to May, this shows up to August. And this visual now, you can change it to a line chart. So I just pick up the month from the legend. I had it here. And now if I do up to March, if I do April, if I do July, if I do October, and this just allows the users to be able to see up to the point they want to see it for, especially maybe this is for a presentation purpose and someone only wants to report by the first 3 months. That's the first quarter of the year. They don't necessarily have to see the entire report for the year, or they want to see up to the half year. Maybe it's some half year reporting meeting. So they select up to June, and then it just shows up to June for them. So this is a way to manage this, and we are able to limit the period that will be displayed on our visuals. Another case might be that you want to be able to highlight specific periods based on the selections here, to say that whatever period is selected on this visual, on the slicer, you want it highlighted in a particular way. Okay, maybe we'll take that last, and then so we can call it a wrap. So how do we do that? Think about it this way. So let me take this back to a table visual. So this is what we have. What we need to do is to find out what period is selected on this slicer and what period are we on this visual. That's all we need to do. And then we compare the two to say that if whatever is on this visual, 2013 May, if it's equal to May 2013 from the slicer, give it a color. That's all. That's the logic behind it. So which is why people would often say that DAX is more of thinking than writing. So if you understand the logic, if you understand what you're trying to implement, it makes it a lot easier for you to translate that into what would work in DAX. So let's try that out in the next 5 minutes or so. So I create a new measure here. So I can call this period check. So what I want to do, two things. I want to know the month that is selected here and the year that is selected here. So I do variable selected year, that will be selected value year, that should be coming from the new calendar, and then variable selected month, this should be selected value that should be coming from the new calendar months table. So I've picked the two that will be coming from here. Then I can say that return, I can say, let me, so that you see what this will return first. So if I do selected year, if I just concatenate that with the selected month, so I need to put a percent here, selected month. So let's see what this returns. So this is select period selection. You see now, I selected June 2013, and you see 2013 June all across. So if I change this to February, so this changes to February 2013. So this is returning what we expect. And this is also a way for you to break down your calculations whenever you think that the calculation is complex. Just at every point, try to return what the calculation will return at that point, and so you can see, you can flow with it and just align it with the logic that you're trying to implement. So this is correct. So what I will do now is I will do an if condition. So I want to check if, or maybe I do this. So in bits, so I can say that selected value of the calendar year, that is what is here on the visual of the calendar year, selected value of the calendar year is equal to S year, and selected value of the month, that is still the month on the table. I'm checking if this is equal to S month. So what I expect this to return is a true or false. So now it only will be true wherever we have the same selection. So this is 2013 February, and on the slicer 2013 February. So if I change this to May, so you see that the true will shift now to 2013 May. So this is true. So which means the only thing we want to add a color to is wherever this is true. So which has solved the problem. So if I come back here to the period of selection, so I'll just wrap this in a if condition. So if I do if this, then I say that if this is true, which already returns a true on the visual, so I can say that this should return dark green. Otherwise, use the default color. So I do this. So now if I come back here, so this returns a dark green, which is the actual color here. But if you want to see the actual color, we can just add a conditional formatting. So there's visuals. I do filtered profit, conditional formatting, background color, and then for here I say you should use a field value, and then I say period check. I do okay. I see that this now changes to this. So if I go here, so this changes to green here. If I do this changes to green. So this is also a form of implementation of the disconnected table. So there are a couple of scenarios, a couple of things that you might want to do depending on the use case you have at hand. But essentially, the idea is that you're able to implement certain things that would naturally not have happened based on the way the model would work normally in Power BI. I think at this point, we just want to take one or two questions before we call it a wrap. Thanks everyone for listening. If you have any questions, please could you signify, and then so I can attend to them. Otherwise, we call it a close. Any question from anybody? All right. So maybe there are no questions now. Thanks a lot, everyone, for joining. If you have questions after this time, you can always ask your questions on the Insight Hub community. Hopefully, the link would also be dropped on the chat. So for people that are not yet on the community, you may want to join. So you have some continued support in case you are trying to implement one or two things and you're stuck, or you need assistance with some interview prep or whatever it is. You are free to open on the group and ask. There are a number of professionals on the group who would be able to respond to you. Thanks again, everybody. Yes, the recording will be shared as soon as the production is complete, and so everyone can go on to rewatch as it's necessary for you. And hopefully, we catch again in our next webinar. Thanks, everyone, and have a good evening.